For today's video, I thought that I would share my Disney pin story. Basically talk about how I got into pins and how I ended up here today. Disney pin trading and collecting started at the millennium, right around 1999 to 2000, and I started collecting Disney pins in 2003. So I've been around pins from very nearly the beginning. I did go to Walt Disney World in 2001, but I was only around 8 years old at the time, so I have no idea or even memories of pins being out and being a thing. I think I was a little bit too young, but my family next went to Walt Disney World in 2003. I was around 10 years old at the time, and that's when I started to get into pin collecting. I do not have many vivid memories from when I was young. I honestly barely remember what went on in high school, so I don't really remember what kind of got me into collecting pins. What might have been my interest in getting into pins was my dad was a day one Disney Visa card member, and all the day one card members were given this commemorative pin. And so I kind of took that pin as my own. I have no idea what happened to it. It somehow got lost sometime during the years. I remember that pin would never stay on my lanyard, but I would say that that was technically my very first ever Disney pin. But so pin trading and collecting was still very new in 2003, and I got my very first ever lanyard then. And I actually found a number of photos of myself from 2003 with my original pins and lanyard. So I found this photo with Donald Duck and my brother and I. I just had a really basic black lanyard on. The material of that lanyard is much nicer than the material of the lanyards they sell in the parks now. That was more, I remember, like a camera strap fabric, so it was a lot thicker and the pins held on better. But you can see on here I have the Disney Visa card member pin, and these are some of my earliest pins on here. I have two photos of myself with my pin lanyard when I did the Epcot World Showcase for the first time. Here I'm rocking my fanny pack and my Pal Mickey. My Pal Mickey was the big thing back then, but I loved going around wearing my lanyard. And this last one has my brother and myself, my lanyard again, and I'm wearing my most beloved Splash Mountain hat. So the pins that I got on that first trip are kind of split into two categories. Ones that I love and still have and that mean a lot to me, and ones that I have no idea what 10-year-old Emily was thinking when she picked them out, and I've since traded and sold them away. So for example, that summer was the one summer ever when my brother and I took little golf lessons through the township, and so I had gotten two golf pins, one with Mickey Mouse and one with Pooh Bear. My family's big into mini golfing, but never have really been into golfing, so those pins I no longer have. And then I also got a Tinkerbell and a scuba diving Mickey. Again, not really sure what I was thinking with those. I think my parents had just kind of said I can get pins, and I'm just like, well, I'm just gonna choose some ones that look kind of interesting. So those pins are ones that I'm fine with not really having anymore because they don't hold any sentimental value to me, and they also don't really hold much of any monetary value. But I have and wanted to quickly show some of my other original 2003 pins that I love. So not counting the Disney Visa pin, I'd say that the Splash Mountain pin is my first actual Disney pin. 2003 was the first time that I rode Splash Mountain, and ever since that first ride, I absolutely fell in love. So I had to get the Splash Mountain pin, I got my Splash Mountain hat, a Splash Mountain shirt, and it has remained my absolute favorite attraction at Walt Disney World. On that trip, we stayed at the Polynesian, so I got this fun little dangle pin to commemorate our stay there. I chose to get this cute little old-timey Minnie Pin. I think because it kind of matched the old-timey style of the Mickey golf pin that I got, but I've always loved Minnie and Mickey. Now this pin is the only old pin that I got that actually has increased in value, and this is part of the state collection. So they had just came out with these in 2002, and I got the Illinois pin that has Goofy on it because I'm from Illinois. And then finally I got this absolute, well now it's a classic, back then it was brand new, Walt and Mickey partner statue in front of Cinderella's castle. This one is one of my all-time simple favorites. So back starting basically from 2003 on, I was exclusively a pin collector. I did not know pin trading was a thing. I have memories of, which I think are real and not just fabricated by myself, in 2003 of a cast member, seeing my pins and asking, oh, do you want to trade? And me thinking, No, why would I want to trade? These are my pins. I picked them out. So I obviously did not understand or even know about pin trading with cast members being a thing, let alone there being like a whole pin trading community out there. I wish I had known or realized, because back in the day, that would have been before you had all these huge counterfeit bulk pin lots, and trading with cast members would have been an actual cool experience. Could have gotten some really old hidden Mickeys. But so I was not at all in the pin trading camp. It was not on my radar at all. I just collected pins as souvenirs for my trips. I absolutely love to have them as mementos, and you'll see with some of the old pins that I'm going to show that they're almost all attractions and park based. And due to the fact that I gravitated towards these type of pins, my old pins that I have basically have not increased in value at all. In fact, many of my pins that I have that are about 10 years old, Disney still sells them as open editions in the parks today, even though when I got them, they were brand new, just released that year. So the next time my family and I went down to Walt Disney World was in 2006. We combined a short stay at Walt Disney World with our one and only Disney cruise. And so I once again had my black lanyard with pins on, and I only found one photo of myself from this 2006 trip actually wearing my lanyard. But I got enough pins during this trip where I filled up my entire lanyard. I don't know, I thought it was super cool having a full pin lanyard, like, ooh, look at how many pins I have. So I think I still have pretty much all of the pins that I got from my 2006 trip. So quickly, some of the 2006 pins that I got, I of course had to get another Splash Mountain pin on account of how much I loved the ride. I also got this neat Soarin' pin because at that point it was still one of the big new attractions. And then I also got these two awesome Mickey baseball pins. My family, we are huge Chicago Cubs fans. We started following the team at the beginning of the 2003 season, so it was really awesome that they had these pins there on my trip down. And then finally, this was the one and only time we did a Disney cruise, so I had to get a Disney Cruise Line pin. In 2008, I was lucky enough to go down to Walt Disney World with my high school band and choir to perform. And then in 2009, I somehow lucked out with my family. We also went down for another trip to Walt Disney World. So in 2008 and 2009 is when I really acquired a lot more pins and basically covered most of all of my favorite attractions in the park. All these pins quickly are going to be a barrage of what I got in 2008 and 2009. This one is another simple one that I love because it has all 4 park icons, including the sorcerer's hat and with fireworks in the background. Oh, and what do you know, I had to get another Splash Mountain pin. So back then, having 3 Splash Mountain pins was like, ooh, big collection. I got an Expedition Everest pin. I remember that they didn't have a big selection of Everest pins at that time, so I loved the ride so much and wanted something to commemorate it, but I've never been a fan of this pin design. I got a Toy Story Mania pin. This one unfortunately appears to have suffered some sun fading and damage from being on my pin board for many years. I got this Big Thunder Mountain Railroad pin. I'm pretty sure this is still in the parks today. Then I got this Space Mountain pin, which I also think they still have in the parks. I got this Test Track pin from when it was still the old school version. This classic Twilight Zone Tower of Terror pin. A Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger spin. A Rock and Roller Coaster pin. A Blizzard Beach pin. A Typhoon Lagoon pin, and then a Pirates of the Caribbean pin. This pin itself isn't super interesting, but it was kind of intriguing to me at the time because this was the very first pin that I ever owned and saw that has the Mickey waffle pattern on the back. So all of my other old original pins just had the regular sandblasted back, and so I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on with this pin? But now the Mickey waffle pattern is the standard for all Disney Parks pins. So pins for me were really just fun little souvenirs, mainly commemorating the rides that I liked, the resorts I stayed at, park icons. And the last time I went to Walt Disney World was in 2011. We went around Christmas time, so I did get a few more pins then, but still, even up to that point, I was just not really even aware of pin trading in the parks. And also, I don't think that's something I really would have been that into as a young kid. Even now, I am an extremely shy and introverted person. I do not do well talking with strangers, and so I don't really even see like young little Emily going up to cast members and saying, oh, do you want to trade? I'm sure it would have been a pretty good experience for my young self, but I'm at least just happy to have had pins as these really fun collectibles to commemorate my Walt Disney World trips over the years. And it wasn't just Disney pins that I was into, I also and still do collect pins from a lot of the places that I visit during family vacations across the US. So I've been a pin person for a pretty long time now. So with my last trip to Walt Disney World being in 2011, from that point on, I was in undergrad and Disney trips just got too expensive for my family. But in 2015, I moved out to Arizona to start grad school at Arizona State. And now I had a park that was only about a 6-hour drive from me. I'd never been to Disneyland before, so it was around the end of October, beginning of November 2016, when my parents said that they were going to plan and take me to Disneyland when they came out and visited in January, and I just got so excited. It had been my longest break since going to a Disney park, and so I just latched on to the idea. I'm going to Disneyland, finally getting back to a Disney park. And so with knowing that I'd be going to Disneyland, I was watching a lot of Disney related videos on YouTube, started watching a lot of Fresh Baked Disney, and I also found Everything Disney Pins on YouTube, which they've now kind of split up into Pin Life and Everything Mousy Pins, but I just watched so many of their videos. And then I found the online pin trading community with the Facebook groups in November. And so that's when I was like, oh my goodness, there's this whole world of pins out there that I never knew existed. Previously, Disney pins had only been accessible to me in the parks when I actually went and visited. But then I'm like, wow, look at this. And so kind of really being into pins as a hobby, it definitely also is a bit of escapism. Because also in November 2016, let's just say there was a not so great event, and that since then, some things have been not so great. And so pins and the online Disney community have kind of, been a way to escape from the not so great things. So I then went to Disneyland for the very first time at the end of January 2017, and that was the very first time when I did actual pin trading in the parks. The new Hidden Mickeys had just recently been released then, so I was mainly on the hunt for them. I only found one, but I did a little bit of trading, but it wasn't something that I was really focusing on doing, just because almost all the boards have the exact same scrappers and fakes on all of them. And so it'd be something I'd kind of be looking around for, but I was mainly there to enjoy the vacation. And then so after that, I decided to actually post a little pin haul video of what I got on YouTube. And then I was like, maybe I'll start posting some more videos of my pin collection and talk about Disney pins and other things Disney. And that kind of snowballed into being here today. So even though I've been collecting Disney pins since 2003, there's so much about Disney pins that I didn't even realize until 2016. And to be frankly honest, I didn't even realize that fake Disney pins were a thing until then. So it's never too late to learn things or get into the pin trading collecting community. If you're into pins, I'd really love if you'd leave a comment about how you got into pins, what year you started collecting. Are you more of a pin trader or a pin collector? So it'd be really cool if anybody wanted to share that. And if anybody has any specific questions about Disney pin trading or collecting or anything related to me and Disney pins, feel free to ask that below and I'll try and answer. But thanks for watching!